So anthropologists explore the concept of culture and the study of culture and cultures in different ways. You know? So we could, for example, approach it by studying religion and symbols. So for example, if I show you these, if you share the culture this figurine comes from, you know what the figurine represents. If you don't, then you just see like a little nice object. Maybe you don't think it's nice because our understanding of what is nice and is ugly is culturally determined. So for this is the Virgin of Guadalupe. It's a little sculpture of her. It's made by artisans in Mexico. They're from Nayarit, the Huichol. So this is Huichol art. And this is part of what's in the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. The Virgin of Guadalupe being very important in Mexican culture, of course, stemming from the Catholic religion, but it has taken a power and a meaning of her own. So that's one way in which we can approach a culture, by studying religion. And then, for example, another image, this image. So this is, if you know nothing about this image, which, unless you've studied anthropology or you're from Mexico, you probably don't know. So what I just said, unless you are, that implies that you need to have the cultural context to be able to know what this image represents. And that's part of what culture is. Culture gives you a context. So this is Coyolxauhqui, the moon goddess, Aztec moon goddess. And I could tell you her stories and myth, and which I will on another occasion. My favorite, she's my favorite Aztec goddess. And then just so that we understand how culture works and what we could focus on studying. Like I could just focus on studying goddesses in Mexican culture, so I'll study Coyolxauhqui and then Virgin of Guadalupe and then whoever other goddesses I can think of, and that could be a valid research topic. And I want to connect it to today and Chicano women living in California. And all of that can be connected. Of course, it needs depth, it needs academic support, it needs research, and that's what anthropologists do. And for example, if I show you this, so if I show this to my mom, she will just say like, oh, that's a nice image and a little hand. Maybe she'll be able to see a W. But if you are from the right context, you will understand what this means. So this meant the W represents West Coast, is the, it actually stems from the rap music and from the gangs. So it has a lot of background like this. It's a nice image. I like it, and that's why I have it. But I also know it has a history. And maybe my research, the research I want to do is on the history of gang symbols or the impact of gang symbols or the presence of these kinds of symbols in today's regional culture or pop culture, for example. I don't know, things. That's how we as anthropologists start thinking. But what we need is to understand the general cultural context. So culture gives you context of, it gives you the elements to function in a society. give you the code. The language is a code, and it gives you this code to function, you know, to be able to communicate with others, to understand the meaning of things, of objects. And another way of doing anthropological research and understanding culture is, for example, following techniques. So if I show you, don't ask me why we have these things here. So this is antique phone. So here, speak over here, dial over here. Right? So this is, you know, among the first forms of a phone. So it was produced here. And then a different form this technology to this kind. This is how you heard and talked, and then you dialed the number this way. No? That actually stayed for a long time. And then, you know, there were other forms, and then we had, for the hard lines, we also had this kind, you know, which press. And here's everything, kind of like a cellular phone nowadays, but it has a signal that is receiving from a receiver that is here, you know, and it's connected to the hard line. And then we all have, you know, our smartphones, which is the most evolved form of this technology. And then this is a lot more than just a phone, right? So if we wanted to study the history of communication technology, well, we could do that. We could do it through the study of phones and how they progressed and how they first were invented and how they changed and what knowledge needed to be produced to go from this to this. Yeah? And that's part of what cultural anthropologists can do. And I'm not just talking, you know, researching religion. I can research technology. Like archaeologists research technology, and they study culture in the past, and they also study culture in the present. I can do archaeology of the phone too. So it depends. It really, anthropology is as open as you want, and that also is a problem because you really need to define exactly what exactly of a culture, which is such a broad term, do you want to focus on or you want to explain. And so here in this unit, we're just exploring the concept of culture, the different ways it has been defined, and how it's used for research. And then we'll explore colonialism. Then the material that we're using, it's produced by the American Anthropological Association and by different researchers. So you have top-notch material that you're having access to, and it's made for these courses, Introduction to Anthropology. Well, I hope you enjoy this little lesson on culture and how it works and how it can be studied. Let me know if you have any questions.